You're doing everything right. You're present, available, attentive. You reply fast. You ask how her day was. You remember the little things. You're there when she needs you, and even when she doesn't. And yet, something shifted. The spark in her eyes dimmed. Her responses turned shorter. Her energy cooled. You felt it in your gut, but kept telling yourself you were just overthinking. The truth is, she sensed it before you did. The moment you became fully accessible, you became emotionally disposable. What no one tells you is that women don't fall for men who are constantly available. They fall for men who seem just out of reach, not out of cruelty, but because the human mind doesn't crave what it already has. It craves what it fears losing. And the irony? She wanted your attention. Yes, she chased it, but she never wanted it handed to her like a discount flyer. She wanted to feel she had earned it, even if unconsciously. Because anything too easy to get is too easy to devalue. This is the paradox that ruins so many men silently. You listen to her, care about her needs, want to be a good man in a world of disappearing ones. But every time you respond instantly, every time you cancel your plans to see her, every time you show up without being asked, you chip away at your own mystery. At first, she's thankful, but then curiosity fades. And what's left is a man she can count on, but no longer feel drawn to. It's not your fault. You were raised to believe that showing up is love. That availability means commitment, that proving you're not like the others is what will make her stay. But deep down, attention given too freely becomes a silent confession of low value. The woman might never say it out loud, but she feels it in her tone, in her energy, in the way her replies go from paragraphs to emojis. And you're stuck wondering, what did I do wrong? Imagine this. A man starts dating a woman who was used to emotionally distant guys. At first, she's amazed. He listens, he shares, he expresses. But weeks later, his availability starts feeling overwhelming. Not because he changed, but because she no longer needs to wonder about. No more unpredictability, no challenge, no chase. He became her emotional wallpaper, always there, unnoticed. And then she tells him, "You're amazing, but something's missing," and walks away, leaving him with nothing but confusion and self-doubt. Psychologically, attention is currency. The more you spend, the less it's worth. The more you give without conditions, the more she feels entitled to it. Not because she's manipulative, but because the brain adapts fast. What was once valuable becomes background noise. Familiarity may breed comfort, but it also kills desire. This is why your emotional presence must be intentional, not constant. Consider a concept from behavioral economics: intermittent reinforcement. Studies show that people become more attached to rewards that are unpredictable. Think of slot machines. People keep pulling the lever, not because they win every time, but because they might. This same principle applies to emotional attention. If she knows exactly when and how you'll reach out, the tension vanishes. But if there's space, uncertainty, a slight edge of not knowing what you'll do next, suddenly you're not just a man, you're a puzzle, and puzzles attract obsession. That's why you lose her when you give her everything. You stop being a discovery, and in the absence of discovery, attraction fades. But here's where it gets worse. She won't tell you any. She won't say, "You're too available." She'll just say she's confused, she needs space, or that "you're too nice." And those words will stab you deeper than you expected, because you were only trying to love her the way you were taught. But love, in this modern age, doesn't survive on good intentions. It survives on polarity, the dance between presence and absence, between clarity and ambiguity, between affection and restraint. She may not know this dance consciously, but she feels it viscerally. She feels it when a man enters the room and doesn't offer his soul within the first hour. She feels it when a man values his time so much that even his attention feels like a reward. You become powerful not when you give her everything, but when you make her feel like she's earning a part of you, not through games or cruelty, but through boundaries, through purpose. through self-respect so deeply rooted that you never need to over-explain why you weren't instantly available. You were building your empire. You were protecting your peace. You were being a man who doesn't bend just to be liked. Because here's the hard truth. When she senses that you're bending, adjusting, reconfiguring your life just to fit hers, something inside her resists. Not because she doesn't appreciate your devotion, but because devotion without mystery turns into submission. And no woman dreams of submitting to a man who submits first. What she wants is to be chosen by someone who doesn't need to choose her to feel complete. The men who leave an impact are never the ones who gave everything from day one. They're the ones who gave selectively, who watched her carefully, who knew when to lean in and when to disappear for a while. Not to manipulate, but to keep the fire alive, because the fire doesn't live in constant light. It lives in shadow, in contrast, in that aching pull that makes her wonder where your mind is, what you're doing, if you're still hers. And that wondering is not cruel. It's vital. It's what keeps her respect awake. Think about every time you chased her harder when she pulled away. Think about how your attention increased as her interest decreased. Now, reverse the pattern. What if your attention decreased slightly the moment hers started to pull back? What if you stopped reaching every time she went quiet? Not as punishment, but as self-preservation. Because a man who keeps giving in the face of withdrawal isn't strong. He's bleeding. The first step is to recognize that your value isn't proven by how much you're willing to give up. It's proven by how much you're willing to protect your time, your energy, your self-worth. And the more you guard these, the more magnetic you become. Not to every woman, but to the kind of woman who can recognize strength in silence, restraint in power, and presence in absence. And here's the twist that few men understand. The moment you stop trying to impress her is often the moment she becomes impressed. The moment you stop offering everything for free, she starts wanting to pay attention. Because now, you're not just another man handing out attention like candy. You're the man who knows its price. Let me know when you're ready for part 2. Because what comes next is how to actually master the balance between emotional availability and strategic distance without losing yourself or the woman you want. You might think that love is about showing up every time she calls, answering every message in under a minute, dropping everything the second she hints at needing you, that this devotion will finally prove your worth. But what you don't realize is that every time you rush to offer yourself like that, a part of her stops seeing you as a man and starts seeing you as a tool. It's not cruelty, it's instinct. A woman doesn't consciously plan to lose respect for the man who makes her his entire world, but she does. And the reason is more primal than you think. Human beings value what feels earned, what feels scarce, what feels like it could be lost. Attention that is constant, unconditional, and overly available doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like background noise. You don't treasure the air you breathe until it's taken from you. That's how your attention becomes meaningless. And worse, it becomes suffocating. You thought consistency would win her heart, but if that consistency feels like neediness, it becomes repellent. Think of the man who rearranges his life just to see her for 10 minutes, who cancels his plans to sit by the phone in case she texts, who gives long, emotional monologues about how much she means to him after 3 dates. She may smile, she may even thank him, but deep inside, something turns cold. Because in her subconscious, it signals, this man has no mission beyond me, no backbone of his own, no mystery I need to solve. And when there's no mystery, there's no magnetism. Men forget that desire lives in tension, not in comfort. That the flame of attraction doesn't survive when there's no oxygen. That's why attention, when given in excess, becomes not a gift, but a burden. There's an old psychological principle known as intermittent reinforcement. It's the foundation of addictive behavior. Slot machines run on it. So do toxic relationships. But it also explains why a man who balances attention with mystery drives a woman wild. When she doesn't know when she'll hear from you next, every message is electricity. When she doesn't feel entitled to your time, Every moment with you feels earned. You don't need to disappear to be respected, but you must not become wallpaper. Remember this: attention is only attractive when it feels like a conscious choice, not a default setting. And yet, most men panic the moment she pulls away. They feel that tightening in the chest, that sense of urgency, and they overcompensate. They start typing long texts. They call too often. They explain themselves, justify every action, pour themselves out in hopes she'll see how much they care. But she doesn't hear love in those words. She hears desperation. Because deep down, she's not testing how much you care. She's testing how solid you are under emotional pressure. She wants to see if you can stay rooted when the storm hits, if you can hold your frame when things feel uncertain, if you can lead without losing yourself. So when she grows distant and you lean in harder, you're failing the test you didn't know you were taking. It's like a dance. If she takes a step back and you take 2 steps forward, she retreats. But if she steps back and you stay centered, calm, composed, she starts wondering why you're not chasing. She wonders what's inside you that doesn't tremble when she disappears. That's the seed of intrigue. That's where the dynamic shifts. She starts to feel your value, not because you're proving it, but because you're living it. Look at the men she truly respects. They're not always the most physically attractive. They're not the richest or the loudest, but they all have one thing in common. They don't flinch. Their attention is valuable because it's not automatic. They don't give themselves just because someone is beautiful or emotionally erratic. They move with purpose. They choose when to engage. And when they engage, they do so fully, but not desperately. And here's the paradox. The less you need to give her attention, the more impact it has when you do. Your attention is a currency. The more freely you print it, the less it's worth. So instead of trying to prove your feelings, prove your backbone. Instead of trying to win her over, win your own respect first. Because a man who respects himself doesn't chase validation. He offers presence, not pursuit. She might say she wants more of your time. She might even complain when you're not around. But if you gave her all of it, she'd resent you. Because deep down, she doesn't want a man who bends. She wants a man who stands. She wants the thrill of wondering what you're thinking. The tension of not knowing when you'll show up next. The power of your present, because it's not given to everyone. And when she earns it, when she feels chosen, not entitled, that's when she feels alive. So stop measuring your value by how much you give. Start measuring it by how much you protect. Your time, your energy, your identity. Because what she truly wants is a man who knows how to hold back. It begins with a glance, a subtle cue you barely notice. She leans in, asks a question, laughs louder than the joke deserved. She's drawing you in, and you, craving connection, do exactly what you think will work. You lean in too. You show interest. You respond fast. You give her your full attention, thinking you're building intimacy. But here's the part no one tells you. She was more intrigued by you before you responded. Because before you leaned in, you were a puzzle. And puzzles create curiosity. Curiosity creates tension. And tension is where attraction thrives. The moment you become fully available, the game is over. The mystery is solved. And for many women, especially those seeking to feel something deeper than routine validation, that's the moment respect quietly starts to fade. Let's talk about what really happens psychologically. When a woman reaches out, she's not always asking for you. She's asking for a feeling, a rush, a spark, an emotional charge. That moment when she looks at her phone and her heart skips because you replied. That second when she thinks, did he mean that? Or is he just playing it cool? That is where the dance happens, not in certainty, but in the unknown. Now imagine the opposite. You're constantly texting. You answer within seconds. You say yes to every invitation. You compliment her every time she walks in the room. Slowly, the surprise fades. The tension dies. And even though you're trying to be loving, present, and supportive, she begins to feel emotionally bored. It doesn't make sense to you, because in your mind, you're doing everything right. But relationships don't run on logic. They run on polarity, and polarity needs space. The mistake most men make is confusing affection with submission. They think if they're always available, always attentive, always nice, they'll be chosen. But what they don't see is that over-availability erodes desire. Desire needs a boundary, a line that says, I care about you, but I'm not here to fill your every emotional void. Chet, this is where emotional self-control becomes everything. A man who can hold his ground, even when she's throwing tests, even when she's silent, even when she says things to provoke him, that man communicates value without saying a word. He's not cold, he's not distant, but he's disciplined. And in discipline, there is power. Power doesn't yell. Power doesn't chase. Power remains centered. When you withhold your attention, not as punishment, but as self-respect, you send a silent message. I choose when and how I give myself. That's where attraction deepens, because now, when you do give her your attention, it means something. It's earned, it's sacred, it has weight. Let's look at a real-world example. There was a man named Marco, early 30s, smart, grounded, confident. He dated a woman who was used to being chased. She would post pictures just to get attention, send flirtatious messages, disappear for days. The usual power game. But Marco didn't flinch. He didn't ignore her, but he didn't chase her either. He responded when he had time. He praised her when she did something meaningful, but he never fell into the trap of over-validating. And slowly, she shifted. She started respecting his time. She made more effort, not because he begged, but because he didn't. Because she couldn't control him emotionally, he became the only one who stirred her emotionally. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about being hard to control. This is why your attention must be measured, not weaponized, not withheld out of fear, but guarded with purpose. Every time you give it freely, without standards, without awareness, you lower its value. And a man who doesn't value his own attention teaches others to do the same. Have you ever noticed how she reacts when you suddenly get busy? When you stop being available 24/7? When you redirect your energy into your work, your purpose, your personal growth? Suddenly, she texts more. She asks where you are. She wonders what changed. That's not an accident. That's the return of polarity. That's the shift from comfort to curiosity. And curiosity pulls people in far stronger than reassurance ever could. Don't misunderstand this. It doesn't mean you should ignore the woman you love, but it means you need to hold the line. Love is not a transaction of attention. It's the intersection of two people who respect themselves enough not to lose themselves. You bring your presence, not your surrender. And sometimes, the most attractive thing you can do is nothing. To let her come to you, to not fill the silence, to sit in the discomfort of uncertainty without losing your center. That silence, that absence, that unpredictability, it speaks louder than words. It tells her, I am not afraid to walk alone, and if you want to walk with me, you'll have to meet me where I stand. This rewrites the entire dynamic. Suddenly, your time is valuable. Your approval is not automatic. Your attention becomes rare, and what's rare is respected. That's when she looks at you differently. That's when she starts fixing her hair before she sees you. That's when she rereads your messages, wondering what you really meant. That's when she respects you, not just for how much you give, but for how clearly you know your worth. And now, she's invested, not because you chased her, but because you made her wonder what kind of man doesn't need to chase. There's something deeply counterintuitive about power in relationships. Most people think it's loud, assertive, dominating, but real power is silent. It's subtle. It's the way you look at someone when you know exactly who you are, and more importantly, who you're not willing to become just to be accepted. This is the space where men either rise or disappear. Every woman, consciously or unconsciously, is drawn to a man who cannot be easily moved, not because he's indifferent, but because he's rooted. She may crave attention, but what she truly craves is the thrill of earning it. And that thrill only exists when your attention is no longer a default setting, but a reward. This is why so many relationships fall into the same destructive loop. The man senses she's losing interest, so he increases his effort. More messages, more compliments, more availability. He thinks love will grow if he waters it constantly. But love doesn't die from lack of attention. It dies from lack of tension. And tension comes from unpredictability. Predictability is the enemy of passion. When she knows exactly what you'll say, when you'll reply, how you'll react, she stops looking forward to you. Not because you changed, but because you stopped changing. You became emotionally static. And static is where desire suffocates. Women are biologically wired to seek strong emotional stimuli. That doesn't mean chaos. It means contrast, depth, challenge. A man who never pulls back gives her nothing to lean into. That's where the balance begins to matter. You cannot be emotionally available all the time and expect to remain desirable. Why? Because the mind adapts. What was once exciting becomes normal. What was once rare becomes assumed. And when something is assumed, it's no longer cherished. Take a look at luxury brands. They don't sell through abundance. They sell through scarcity. Limited edition, one of a kind. Not everyone gets it. And that's precisely why people want it. Now apply that to your attention. When she realizes that not everyone gets it, when she sees that even she doesn't get it automatically, it becomes more meaningful. She starts wondering what it takes to earn it again. And that wondering brings her back to the place where attraction began. Curiosity. This is what many men fear most, being less available. They believe distance will make her feel abandoned. But here's the truth. A woman only feels abandoned by a man who made himself her emotional servant. If your presence has always been unconditional, then your absence feels like betrayal. But if your attention has always been balanced with purpose and boundaries, then your absence feels like gravity. She notices it, she misses it, and most importantly, she respects it. Respect cannot exist where availability has no limits. That's why timing matters more than volume. Don't be present all the time. Be present fully in the right moments. Look her in the eyes when you speak. Put the phone down when you listen. Touch her when she least expects it, not when she demands it. This kind of intentional presence is rare. And what's rare always leaves a mark. Men who master this balance aren't cold or distant. They are emotionally strategic. Let me tell you about a guy named Leon. Quiet, composed, not flashy, but women noticed him. Why? Because he wasn't always there. He wasn't the guy liking every photo, replying to every story, hanging on every word. He would vanish for days, not out of manipulation, but because he had a life. He had direction. And when he returned, he brought stories, energy, experiences. His attention had weight, and women felt it. Leon once said something brilliant. If I'm always around, she never gets to miss me. And if she never misses me, how can she know how she truly feels? There's a lesson in that. Absence reveals truth. Presence only reveals behavior. When you're constantly present, she acts how she thinks you want her to act. But when you step away, her real feelings surface. Does she reach out? Does she care? Or was it just comfort disguised as connection? This is why space is not a threat. It's a test. And only the man with emotional discipline can pass it. You have to resist the urge to fix everything instantly. When she's cold, don't rush in with warmth. When she's distant, don't collapse with neediness. Hold your frame. Let her feel the distance. Let her wonder what's going through your mind. That uncertainty isn't cruel. It's clarifying. It shows her that your love isn't fragile, that your self-worth isn't on a leash. It's in these moments that respect is built. Because now, she sees you not as someone desperate to be chosen, but as someone who has already chosen himself. And from that place, everything changes. The way she speaks to you, the way she looks at you, the way she shows up for you, not because you begged, but because you became the kind of man who doesn't have to. And the irony? Once she respects you again, she begins to crave your attention again. It comes full circle. She wanted you. She got you. She took you for granted. You pulled back. She missed you. She rediscovered her desire. And now, when you show up again, when you give her your presence, your touch, your time, it hits deeper. It's no longer just attention. It's earned intimacy. That's the kind that lasts. There's a moment every man faces, the crossroad between being loved for what he gives and being respected for who he is. Many take the easy route. They give more time, more affection, more of themselves. It feels like the right move, especially when she seems distant, but something inside them starts to shift. They begin to feel hollow, not because love is wrong, but because giving became a replacement for value, and no one respects what they believe they already own. That's the invisible tragedy of modern men. They believe proximity equals intimacy. That being constantly available proves their loyalty. But what it often proves, to her subconscious mind, is that he has nothing else going on. And if he has nothing else going on, why should she be excited to be around him? It's brutal, but it's real. You can't create desire in someone by filling every empty space. You create desire by leaving a space that only you can fill, and then choosing when to fill it. This is where true masculine polarity is built, not through dominance, not through coldness, but through self-governance. Through having your own orbit so strong that even when you give her attention, it's clear it came from abundance, not from emptiness. That's when she pays attention. Because now, every word you say has subtext. Every gesture has meaning. You're not just talking to be heard. You're speaking because you have something to say. You're not touching her because you're starved. You're touching her because she's earned a moment of your world. And when you live like this, something remarkable happens. She begins to adjust to your gravity. Her behavior shifts. Her tone changes. She pays closer attention to what you value, not because you demanded it, but because you no longer reward behavior that disrespects your standards. And this subtle shift, this ability to walk away from the need to always please, is what separates a man who's chasing love from a man who becomes worthy of it. You become worthy not by being perfect, but by being grounded. That means having principles, non-negotiables. You don't respond just because she called. You don't chase just because she's slipping. You don't collapse just because she's confused. You observe, you listen, but you always act from your value, not from your fears. And this is where true attraction becomes long-term. Short-term attraction is built on attention, but long-term attraction is built on unpredictability rooted in integrity. She never knows exactly how you'll respond, not because you're playing games, but because you're no longer reactive. You think, you process, and when you act, it carries the full weight of your presence. Let's break this down with a story. There was a man named Evan, thoughtful, intelligent, deeply romantic. He fell hard for a woman who was stunning, witty, and emotionally unpredictable. At first, she adored him. She texted constantly. She introduced him to her friends. She even spoke about their future together. Evan, believing he had found the one, gave everything. He rearranged his schedule. He canceled plans with friends. He was available every time she called. And slowly, the messages got shorter. Her voice, colder. The intimacy, less frequent. Evan panicked. He doubled down. More flowers, more text, more declarations of love. Until one day, she told him, "I don't feel the same spark anymore. You're just too much." It broke him, but what truly shattered him wasn't that she left. It was the realization that he had given up himself to keep someone who never asked for that sacrifice. He became her reflection instead of her counterpart, and that's the silent warning. You can't keep someone interested by becoming who they want. You keep them intrigued by staying who you are, especially when it's inconvenient. That tension, that resistance to full submission, is what keeps attraction alive. This is why the concept of strategic absence matters so much. It's not about ghosting. It's not about disappearing to punish. It's about creating space for her to reach for you, to wonder, to miss, to question whether she still has access to the man who once felt like a mystery. Women don't want men who explain themselves constantly. They want men who live in such a way that every action is an expression of their identity. A man who doesn't need to prove anything because his life speaks for him. Now, this doesn't mean you become emotionally distant or manipulative. That's a trap. Real masculine strength is not about detachment. It's about discernment, knowing when to lean in and when to hold your ground, when to express and when to observe, when to act and when to let her act first. And when she does, don't rush to reward it. Watch, listen, see if her actions match her words, see if her effort is real or reactive, because what you allow early becomes the standard later. This is the final evolution. You no longer give attention for free. You give it with purpose. And that purpose is not her validation. It's your alignment. Your attention is a currency. And like any currency, it loses value when spent carelessly. You must guard it. Because when you do, you'll find something extraordinary happen. The right women begin to respect you more. The wrong ones fall away. And in that space, you rediscover the most important relationship of all. The one you have with your own identity. You are not here to be consumed. You are here to be chosen. Yes, but first, to be felt, fully, powerfully, rarely. Let me know when you're ready for the next theme.